Check, check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go!
Well, Ben, it's pretty hard to nail down the greatest invention of all time, okay? Like electricity. I mean, the wheel is an underrated invention, but I'm in Saskatchewan right now. We just had unbelievable, like, sell cars is my day job and then do this on the side kind of as a labor of love. I, you know, I had the greatest 2 weeks because it was been like +6, +8, +3. And I'm like, this can't be February in Saskatchewan. And then we got 35 centimeters of snow. So the greatest invention to me is a snowblower, brother. How about you?
Yeah.
What's the greatest invention for you, do you think?
Well, if we're going with recency bias, like you seem to be here, I think just the brush with the ice scraper on the end, because we got about a couple inches of ice covering our cars in Toronto here. So that a simple invention, not quite as complex as the snowblower, but yeah, that certainly came in handy today.
It's crazy, hey? Like I consider you a very intelligent guy. I don't think I'm a knob, although people would say I'm a knob. But like, who just sits down and says, "I'm going to make a brush with one end to scrape ice and the other end to wipe snow off"? And they're probably sitting in a place where they don't need a snow brush now.
Yeah, a millionaire is who makes that decision. That's the thing. That's why we're sitting here instead of in a mansion on top of a hill somewhere.
Hey, did you watch that Canada-Czechia game? Like, I know you're a football guy, but did you see that? That was an instant classic. Did you see any of that game?
I saw the end. I saw the very end, and man, that got way more exciting than it should have. Like they shouldn't. But that's the thing, you play against a team like that. All it takes is a goalie gets hot. Once you get into the playoffs, these are all good hockey teams. You got NHL guys that there, and so I thought it might be done. And then I've been seeing the still photos since then with six guys on the ice and all sorts of scandals. So it's a good thing that Canada pulled it out for multiple reasons. But that would have turned into something big maybe if Canada had lost and they go back and find not only Canada losing, but then also, hey, what about the six men on the ice kind of thing. There's a bunch of stuff, but hopefully Canada's now got that out of their system. That was the one, and they can now cruise to a gold medal. That's my hope.
I'll tell you what, though, man. Like, listen, we need officials. I think the CFL officials, dollar for dollar, are some of the best in the world. I know some people will snicker at that, but for the money that's invested in them, I think we do have a pretty good group of CFL officials. But even they make mistakes. I just can't believe that in an Olympic hockey game, like, it wasn't like there was a faulty line change at the bench. They played with six guys for that entire play for the go-ahead goal. I am glad Canada won, obviously, because we're Canadian, but it would have tainted the whole tournament, the rest of the tournament.
Oh, for sure, it would have. Yeah, there would have. I don't even know how you recover from that because it's the one seed just to make it even more of a big deal. So yeah, it's a good not to worry about now. Canada won. The good guys prevailed, and hopefully there's some lessons learned from the officiating crew there. Well, I bet you the Team Canada doesn't see that group again.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's talk football. That's why I got you on here to pick your intelligent mind on the game of football. Let's start with the Argos. Just your thoughts, assess their off season so far. I don't know that you can win a championship in the off season because we see a lot of teams try to buy teams and it doesn't work. But you can maybe take a couple of steps back. How do you think the Argos fared so far here in the off season?
I think they did pretty well, and I agree with you. Like I'm always skeptical when you have a great February. That the Elks I think had a great February last year. That didn't necessarily turn them into a Grey Cup team. Now they were better. They certainly made some improvements, but I'm always very nervous about crowning any CFL team in February because year after year we see teams with a great free agency haul and a great draft, and then they don't necessarily back it up. It's someone else that's there at the end. For the Argos, a lot of their moves started early. They signed Ralph Hawley back in November, a guy that was amazing for them and just such a terrific plug in the middle who could also generate a pass rush. And that's something they really missed last year on the interior. And then they brought in Dwayne Hendricks. That's a great way to fix your defensive tackle situation. Hawley and Hendricks, I think those two guys alone are a huge upgrade. And then you look at some of the other moves they've made. They've gone to some old familiar faces. And this is I think, a smart move by Barker and Huff, who look at that Toronto Grey Cup team from a couple of years ago. And Toronto couldn't afford, this is something that Saskatchewan's starting to go through right now. Like when you win the Grey Cup, it's tough to retain your guys. Not just the next year, the year after that. Everybody wants them, and their price goes up. And so Toronto now in a situation where their DB room was getting a bit weak, and they brought back some familiar faces, guys who they couldn't afford to bring back 2 years ago, but prices have gone down a little bit. The market's maybe caught up a little bit, so they bring in guys like Adarius Pickett and Robert Priester. Those are huge adds. Deshaun Amos, who I think was one of the best defensive backs in the CFL, they were able to take from Hamilton. There's a big loss in there, and we'll maybe get to that in Wynton McManus. But in terms of the guys they added, I think they added some stars, and I kind of view it as adding Chad Kelly as well, because he didn't play a single snap for the Argos last year. One of the reasons they struggled, obviously, and he will be playing this season. And so you kind of look at him as an add as well, although it's not through traditional free agency.
Let's talk about the team just down the road from you, the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Wynton McManus, that was a head scratcher for me. He'll help that defense out. And then I don't know if I'll quite go this far, but I kind of think of remember Anthony Calvillo with the Las Vegas Posse, and he was almost, he went to Hamilton and he looked like a pouty guy. And then actually the Riders, the story goes, made a trade for him. They were going to trade for him and bring him in here, but Reggie Slack comes in instead. He goes behind Tracy Ham, and the rest is history. I kind of would like to, I hope for Trey Ford, Bo Levi Mitchell can rub off on him because he's got talent. Somehow, it just didn't work out in Edmonton.
Yeah, I really hope that Trey Ford can find something, and I'm pulling for him. I'm above all else a fan of the league, a fan of Canadian football, and I would love nothing more than to see Trey Ford be successful wherever that may be, including Hamilton. And for the Ticats, I think it's an ideal situation. I think you've got a very competent backup now behind Bo Levi Mitchell, and you never know. Like, Bo did very well last year, staying healthy, and he has largely. But as you get older, things hurt more and more every time. I don't know about you. Like, there were mornings when I don't even know what happened. I get out of bed, I'm like, why is that sore?
Exactly.
And that's Bo's not quite our vintage, but he's starting to get up there a little bit, and so you do need a number two QB. That's been proven in the CFL. You can't survive without a good number two. And I think for him, it's a great situation. You learn behind one of the best, a guy that has been there and done that, and by all accounts is a great mentor to younger quarterbacks. And so I think it's a great situation for Hamilton, great situation for Trey Ford. Hopefully for Hamilton's sake, they don't need Trey Ford this year, but maybe this is a succession plan where he can learn from Bo and be the guy going forward, and we'll have a couple Canadian quarterbacks to root on every weekend.
So I doubled you up there, so I'll just circle back to the first part of that question. Were you surprised Wynton McManus, A, was let go, B, ends up... I don't think ending up in Hamilton was that big of a shock, but leaving Toronto?
I'm not surprised. I was actually calling for that, and I want to clarify that first, because I want to say, first of all, I believe Wynton McManus is the best linebacker in the CFL. I really do believe that. And I think he's one of the best defensive players in the CFL. The Argos were in a situation, though, where they had a lot of holes in the boat, a lot of things to fix. And with Wynton McManus, they would love to have brought him back, I'm sure. And I'm sure, I don't know any details or anything like that, but I'm sure there were conversations about trying to bring him back in. But the reality is he's too good a player to get a team-friendly deal with. There were going to be other teams knocking on the door, Hamilton included. And they have two guys I love as middle linebackers, and Isaac Darkangelo, Aaron Casey. I think both of those guys are starting caliber CFL middle linebackers. And so when you've got that room full of talent, you've got guys, there's a drop-off. Of course, Wynton's the best. These guys are not Wynton McManus, but they're good. And if you don't sign Wynton McManus, it allows you to go and get another guy like Dakota Shepley, for example, who I think is, has a chance to be one of the best offensive linemen in the league. And that was an area of concern for the Argos last year. They had trouble protecting Nick Arbuckle. And so if you can take that McManus money, put it into O-line and shore up another spot, and know that you're probably going to be okay at linebacker with the guys you've got there, then I think that's probably the smart move. And that's why I was calling for the Argos to do just that. But it's tough. The fans aren't happy. And I totally get that. Wynton's awesome. And there's going to be a question of can they replace his leadership in the room. But that's why you've got guys like Pickett and Amos and guys that have been vocal leaders in their clubs, because they'll need to do that, because there's no question even football stuff aside, Winton is a fantastic leader, and guys follow him. You see the difference when he's in the game versus not. The attitude that he has on the field is, it's contagious.
Yeah. So you don't win in February. We both agreed on that. But if a team was to have won in February, do you think Ottawa won or Winnipeg won? Because they were both of the two most active teams, I would say.
Yeah, I think Winnipeg. I think it's close. Like I know a lot of people have been very impressed with Ottawa's offseason. Me too. I think they've done a lot of interesting stuff. Like they've got an attitude change there. Like the players they're bringing in are pretty serious dudes, right? Like they're going to have I think a culture shift to go along with Ryan Dinwiddie's arrival in Ottawa. So don't get me wrong. I like the moves that they've made. What I like about what Winnipeg has done is they haven't really been able to do this recently because, like we talked about earlier in the conversation, when you're successful, everybody poaches your team. Winnipeg last year hasn't suffered the same losses that they've necessarily had some of the previous seasons where teams are trying to pick them apart. And they're a little bit under the radar, and yet they go out and bring in a bunch of guys who I think are going to be immediate contributors. I think there's some underrated signings there, and guys like Tim White, for example. Like I think they're very almost quietly put together a team that I think is going to be very good next year. When I think people are tired of thinking about Winnipeg being very good, but last year may have been the off year. They may be back.
Not me. I'm not tired. I'm not tired of it, man. I'm off. Go Bombers, go. Hey, listen. But so Collaros is coming back. He got knocked out of a couple of games last year. He said it could be his last year, and it's not because he doesn't want to keep playing. But he said you never know. It could be my last year. Here's my question for you though. How do you feel about? Listen, I'm all for the players making money and make as much as you can because it's a short shelf life in football. But I don't know if Elgersma's doing himself any favors by bouncing around here. He could be learning so much behind Zach Collaros. He could be the next guy. I think the same thing about Curtis Rourke. Like, how long are you going to bounce around? Come to Saskatchewan. Learn behind a Trevor Harris. I know I'm being selfish as a CFL fan, but just your thoughts on those two guys.
It's so tough, and it's easy to say from the outside. Like I know, from my, we look at this logically, and it's easy for us to say, like, get play some football, get up there, play football. That's what you need to be doing, and I just think from that position, you've got such a small window. It's when you're young. Like we see that with Nathan Rourke. Like by the time he kind of got down there, it was too late. Like teams weren't willing at his age, not that he was 40 years old or anything like that, but it's a small window, and I think guys like Elgersma and Curtis Rourke, and Rourke's got his foot in the door. Like I think he's in a slightly different situation, but yeah, for Elgersma, I think from the outside, it's really easy to say, I think he should be in Winnipeg. I think he should be playing football. Get some tape if you can, and learn from a guy, especially while he's there, because he's not going to be there forever. To be able to pick the brain of Zach Collaros, I think is a value, certainly, for a young quarterback. And so, it's easy for us, but I think in his shoes, maybe I'd be doing the same thing. Maybe I'd be hoping, all it takes is one phone call. Suddenly I'm in, wherever the NFL city is, and the potential to make millions and be an NFL star is back on the table. So, he believes in himself. These are really confident guys. You don't get to that position without believing in yourself strongly. So it's hard, I think, sometimes, and I don't think you're going to have agents pushing them to go, no, leave the NFL, get back to the CFL. They want a shot at that too, so it's tough. I would love to see him in Winnipeg. I think we will at some point, but not soon enough.
Well, okay, so, and speaking of Winnipeg and Saskatchewan, Trevor Harris had a phenomenal year, better than I thought he'd have. He was healthy all for one game he played, which is the best stretch he's had in a while. His team goes and wins a Grey Cup. I think Jeremy O'Day did a decent job re-signing the guys that he, recognizing what guys he could bring back. You talk about being plucked. You can't keep everybody. But you look at Winnipeg and you look at Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan's got a pretty good roster to run it back. And Winnipeg, we just said, we agree, they won February. But both of those teams do not have real bona fide backups, and those are two elder statesmen. Talk about walking a tightrope without a net. Yeah,
that's it, right? You got all your eggs in the one basket, and that's maybe we're making a bigger deal out of it than we should, because maybe there's no one, maybe there aren't a lot of guys there that you can turn to and say, well, there's a backup quarterback that if Collaros or Harris were gone for the season, I feel comfortable that they could lead our team to the Grey Cup. I'm not sure there are a lot of backups that you can say that about. So they've got guys that they're comfortable with, but we've seen over the last few years, usually when you lose your starter, it doesn't really matter who's there. Like you can have a guy that can, tide you over for a few games, but if it's a season-ending injury, chances are you're not going to make it. You need your number one guy. And maybe that's the philosophy is, look, we're all in on Harris and Collaros, and we want to spend our money with starting pieces instead of backups. But like we said earlier in the conversation, it's an important piece because at some point in the year, those guys are going to miss a few games. Could those games be the difference? But I do think once you get to playoffs, you need Collaros, you need Harris, you need your starter. Otherwise, you can maybe make it for a game, but probably not the whole playoff run.
Hey, lastly, you're a big Canadian content guy. You go to the Combine all the time, do your networking. It's cool. I think it's great. Sometimes I'm a little bit overly critical of the CFL. I'll give them some kudos here. The Ted Gavaya Award that's going to be handed out. I think that's a great award. Good recognition of a man. That was one of the cool stories and then sad stories all in the same. Guy waits his whole life to get his own football team, and then he gets it, and unfortunately doesn't have it for too long because loses a battle with cancer. But I'm glad he's being recognized posthumously.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You won't find anybody with anything negative to say about Ted. Everybody's got a story, a good one, and a positive one. For me, it was at the Winnipeg Combine. It's the only time I ever talked face to face with Ted Gavaya, and he came up to me, and I thought that was, that's just very him. He came up and sat down next to me. I was just sitting in the lobby of the hotel, waiting to get out to the Combine facility. And he came over and struck up a conversation. We talked for about 20 minutes, and it's just like we're two old friends sitting at a bar or something like that. It was fantastic, and he's got that. It was one of those things where that magic that he had was that he could make anyone feel like the most important person in the room, and he had a tremendous gift for evaluating football talent, and gone far too soon. So I'd love to see the CFL recognize him in any way they can, and I think this is a great move.
Ben, thanks for your time, man. Always appreciate it.
Always love talking to you, Michael. Take care.